This week, mild-mannered Hugh Grant finds love and a new identity as Mickey Blue Eyes.
Helen Mirren has it in for Katie Holmes in Teaching Mrs. Tingle.
And Albert Brooks looks to Sharon Stone for inspiration in The Muse.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're now accepting bids for lot number 84.
Oil on canvas, dated 1870. La femme chez Aube, which translates as a woman with massive bottom.
Hugh Grant plays an art dealer who marries into the mob in Mickey Blue Eyes, one of 5 new movies this week. And a tribute to Gene Siskel will close this last show of the summer. I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times, and across the aisle from me is this week's guest critic.
I'm Desson Howe, film critic for the Washington Post. Glad to be here, Roger.
Nice to have you here, Desson. Welcome aboard. Our first movie is Mickey Blue Eyes, starring Hugh Grant as an auctioneer of high-priced art who finds himself falling in love with the daughter of a mafia boss. Using his usual shy and feckless charm, Grant wants to marry Jean Triplehorn, who hasn't yet revealed her family secret. He decides to ask her to marry him by hiding his proposal in a fortune cookie.
You gonna check yours?
Oh, no. Oh, I'm going to save it for later.
Eat cookie.
That's all right. I'm sure she will when she's ready.
Well,
Thank
no,
you.
you have it.
No, you eat cookie.
I don't want to.
老板娘，你不叫他把它打开，太意思了。
She explains that her dad's in the mob and that could cause problems for Grant, but the engagement goes ahead, and he meets her father, played by James Caan, and a mafia godfather, played by Burt Young.
So you meet everyone? Vinny, Carmine, and this is Uncle Vito.
Rent, Goodfellas, Casino, Godfather, 1, 2, 3.
Eventually, Grant himself has to pretend to be a mobster and learn to talk like one, but I don't think this scene works because Grant's accent is so truly bad, it passes beyond humor and into bad acting.
Try this one here. Get the hell out of here. No R's.
Get the hell out of here.
Not he. 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 He.
One problem is that Hugh Grant never really seems to think he's in real trouble in this movie. He's not so much a character as he is a dinner guest who dropped into the film. Joe Vitarelli, who was so funny as the toughest guy in Analyze This, has a similar role here, and he's good, and so is Burt Young as the tight-lipped mob boss, but this is a concept that never really gels into a comedy.
You know, the only thing I did like about this was Burt Young. I really enjoyed him being a mafioso. But Hugh Grant, I tend to think of him the same way I think of Lassie. Lassie always gets the role as the collie, no matter what Lassie does. Hugh Grant always gets to be the Englishman. Here he's a cartoon version of that. And I think he's flat and forced, and the problem is we have Notting Hill as a comparison, which he did really well in, and it just doesn't hold up against it.
I know what you mean, because Julia Roberts has a new movie out called Runaway Bride, and looking at that, I was thinking of Notting Hill. When a movie really clicks and makes an impression on you so that you think of Hugh Grant and Julia Roberts in a very particular way, then when you see this kind of second-tier stuff later in the same summer, it suffers. Hugh Grant does have a certain range. He's kind of a Cary Grant kind of figure. I didn't expect him to be anybody other than Hugh Grant, but I felt that maybe the screenplay here, supporting actors, the whole energy of the film could have pushed him a little harder.
It's a flat story, and is there a rating for Sleeps with the Fishes? We should have that. Well, anyway, let's move on to the next movie, The Adventures of Sebastian Cole. It's a coming-of-age movie with an intriguing twist. It's about the emotional life of an intelligent, underachieving high school senior, played by newcomer Adrian Grenier, who's frustrated and bored with his small-town life in upstate New York in the early 1980s. That boredom is shattered when his stepfather Hank informs Sebastian and the family he plans to have a sex change operation and turn from Hank into Henrietta. Sebastian, still dealing with a stepfather in a skirt, has a surprise of his own. He wants to be a writer.
Being a writer means long hours of tedious, frustrating work. And to be good at it, you have to be incapable of not doing it.
I don't like that. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to express those things. I don't want to show the marks.
And Dr. Greg as Henrietta. Sebastian's adventures pretty much amount to following his impulses.
Get back! Get back! Oh, my God, Jesus! Oh, out of my way!
On Sebastian's graduation day, Sebastian's paternal side of the family meets Henrietta. Love that navy dress.
Husband,
Yes, dear.
why is he wearing a dress?
I can't imagine.
Written and directed by first-time filmmaker Todd Williams, The Adventures of Sebastian Cole rolls along with a sort of casual, arbitrary abandon, but it reflects the emotional state of its central character. Adrienne Grenier makes an outstanding debut, and Clark Gregg makes the role of Henrietta both believable and touching instead of playing it for laughs. The film may not be perfect, and it does show the youth of its creator, but that's a good thing. This is a very good first effort, and I hope in his future projects, Williams maintains his integrity.
You know, I really agree with you. I like this film, and the more it went on, the more I liked it, because I could see what was happening here. There's a scene in the film where the kids are at the prom, and he's come without a date, and they talk about how they hate high school movies and they hate prom movies. This movie is not like all of these dumb high school movies we've had all summer. This is about the quirks and peculiarities of kids who are trying to find their way, and it's absolutely crucial that Clark Gregg play that role so well, because here's a man who's decided that he's going to be a woman. Now, frankly, I don't want to offend him. Nobody in the world would ever think that he was a woman. But he handles it with dignity. This is what he has to do.
Yes.
And he does it in such a way that he becomes one of the most intriguing characters in any movie this year.
I love this movie because it's like supply-side economics. The film's just trying to generate wealth of character, and the hell with the deficit. And there's always a surprise coming, some quirk or idiosyncrasy.
Yeah, you know, another film it reminded me of was A Soldier's Daughter Never Cries from last year, because both of those films are about unconventional high school kids. They have connections in America, connections over in Europe. They have parents who don't fit the mold, and yet there's a lot of artistry and a lot of promise and a lot of tension. And in both cases, there's just so much more interest in these plots as they meander through real life.
Well, the point is,
than in these high school movies about who's going to go to the prom.
Yeah, there's no archetypes. This is a cliche-free zone, and this is a place I want to visit again and again.
I liked it a lot. Okay, coming up later, Helen Mirren is held captive by her students in Teaching Mrs. Tingle. Coming up next, Albert Brooks is amazed to find that Sharon Stone is the muse.
It's my job to inspire.
Well, let me put this in a form that isn't insulting, because I tend to be too direct. All my friends tell me that. The script's no good.
That's the form that's not insulting? What would the insulting form be?
Albert Brooks, who is one of my favorite writer, director, actors, gets the bad news from a studio executive there that his new screenplay stinks. It's so bad, in fact, that he's fired and faces a midlife crisis. Why is it, he wonders, that some writers seem to go from one success to another while he seems headed for sudden and irreversible failure? In desperation, he turns for help to another screenwriter, a friend played by Jeff Bridges, who tells him, well, he uses the services of a muse who inspires him. Yes, he says, there are still muses in the world.
Go to Tiffany's right now. Bring her something.
Tiffany's? I don't shop for my wife at Tiffany's.
Your wife can't save your career. Do what I'm telling you.
The Brooks character meets his friend's muse, played by Sharon Stone. She's very hard to please and sends him on constant errands, even to the grocery store, where he runs into his wife, who's played by Andie MacDowell.
Who eats these?
The snails? I do.
Since when?
Well, there's a lot of things you don't know about me.
Like your need for tampons.
Eventually, Brooks moves his muse into the guest house, and yes, she's high maintenance, but maybe she's worth it, as she's visited by a stream of grateful clients, including Titanic's James Cameron.
You'll like it. I bought it after the Titanic bonus.
It's not.
God, no.
That's one of the running jokes in the movie, how many people owe their success to this muse. Another one is Martin Scorsese.
I'm working on a remake of Raging Bull.
Really?
Yeah, only this time I'm doing it with a real thin guy. Real thin. Can you see it? Can you see it?
Yeah, I see it.
Not like normal thin, but really thin.
A real thin guy.
Thin but angry.
Angry.
Angry. Can you see it?
Angry, too.
Thin and angry. Thin and angry. Thin and angry.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Is there a Starbucks near here?
Oh, gee, I'd be careful if I were you. You might have had your quota.
Sharon Stone does indeed seem to be a successful muse, but how can anybody be sure? Maybe she's just an opportunist who likes those little blue boxes from Tiffany's. Like most of Albert Brooks's comedies, this one is inspired by quiet desperation. First, he's crushed by failure, then he finds that the price of success may be more than he wants to pay. The muse is very smart and very funny, and in it we find out that it's better to be waiting for your muse than for her to be waiting for you.
I'm so glad that you like Albert Brooks. I adore him. He's great. I love this movie. And to further the quiet desperation thing, I was wondering what it is about Albert Brooks that I like so much. People know him from broadcast news, and I think that it would be nice if his other films got a wider audience. The thing I love about him is he seems to have an infrared set of goggles on, and he sees all the irony, and everybody else misses it in Hollywood because of the ultraviolet haze in their brains or something. And Albert Brooks is just standing there, and we find ourselves connecting with him, even though he's the outsider.
We see the situation through his eyes,
Exactly.
the incredible rudeness of the executive.
Josh.
The way that he looks from a distance as all of these successful people, not only Scorsese and Cameron, but also Rob Reiner, thank this muse. You know, Reiner says, hey, thanks for the American president. That's a great line.
Yes.
The way that Sharon Stone, by the way, finds just the right tone here, because she doesn't walk around like some fairy godmother. She's just a woman with a very simple presence, and she loves to get stuff, and she complains if the walls aren't painted the right color or the furniture isn't right, and then just because she's there, you're successful. I mean, it's real subtle the way they handle the supernatural element in this film.
Well, the skewering is still there, and that's what I enjoyed. There's also that great scene with Marty Scorsese saying, I'm remaking Raging Bull with a thin, angry guy this time. I mean, there's just, they come every minute.
It's a very funny movie. If you like movies, of course, you'll probably like it even more because of all the in-jokes. Coming up next, there's only one side to Mrs. Tingle, her bad side. That's until her students rebel in Teaching Mrs. Tingle.
Another girl was burned at the stake today. I fear William Griggs will point to me next.
It's completely factual. She was ultimately burned at the stake.
Always the victim. Aren't we, Miss Watson?
Clearly, it's going to take more than witchcraft to impress Mrs. Tingle, the title character in Teaching Mrs. Tingle. That's the new movie from Kevin Williamson, best known for the youth horror movie Scream. History teacher Mrs. Tingle, played by the fabulous Helen Mirren, seems to be more interested in crushing her students than in nurturing them. Her prime target is the sweet-natured, hard-working senior, Lee Ann, played by Katie Holmes, who needs a top grade to earn a college scholarship. But when Mrs. Tingle finds a stolen copy of an upcoming history exam in Lee Ann's backpack, those college dreams are finished.
The smartest girl in school caught cheating. It'll be scandalous.
Lee Ann and two classmates, Joe Lynn and Luke, visit Mrs. Tingle's home to fess up that it was Luke that stole the test, not Lee Ann. But there's a nasty scuffle, Mrs. Tingle gets knocked on the head, and the panicked students tie her up like a hostage. Drama student Joe Lynn, played by Marissa Coughlan, pretends to be Mrs. Tingle and calls in sick.
Take as much time as you need. The important thing is your health. And don't hesitate to call us if you need anything. Bye now. Done.
Roger, I'm giving an F to Teaching Mrs. Tingle. Helen Mirren, who played the sensational lead character in the British TV series Prime Suspect, is one of my favorite actors in the whole world. The fact that she doesn't call doesn't stop me loving her. She put so much presence in that cardboard character, she almost brings this thing to life. But what I kept thinking was, what a tragedy to see such talent playing second fiddle to another collection of MTV flavors of the month in a second-rate horror comedy.
Oh, I'm completely in agreement with you. This movie really left a sour taste in my mouth. It is a negative, bitter, unfunny, aggressively screechy kind of film, and Mirren plays the character straight. I guess it would be an interesting character in a different kind of movie, but what's the point of this film? I mean, when you contrast this with The Adventures of Sebastian Cole, which has so much life and so much humor and so much energy and so much creativity, and then this is just a formula film, and not even a formula film that pays off with the usual, dumb laughs. It's not even funny. It's really an excruciating experience.
Everywhere you look, there's something that will irritate you.
Yeah.
I remember one particular scene where Marissa Coughlan, who's a drama student, is bored, and she starts doing an imitation of Linda Blair in The Exorcist just to pass the time. And she does a sort of politically correct version of it, as if she's embarrassed to be saying it in front of the audience.
She should be. She should be. This movie is an embarrassment. Okay, next film. Our next movie is one of the angriest films I've ever seen. It's named Cabaret Balkan, and it's a loosely linked series of episodes in which violent and thuggish behavior is directed at random victims in Belgrade. It's not about the war, it's about the anarchic climate in the former Yugoslavia, where macho madness seems to be running wild. The film opens with an ironic introduction by a master of ceremonies.
Noches ću malo da vas
You're never quite safe in this movie. After a woman is harassed by a sexual predator on a bus, she escapes only to be accused by her boyfriend of leading the guy on.
Možda ti dam raskriv. On nije kriv, ja nisam kriv. Ko je kriv, bre? Jesam ja kriv.
All of the men in this movie are totally hung up on their possession and control of women. Another infidelity takes on an additional level of violence during boxing practice.
Ko je velen? Žene su samo...
Cabaret Balkan is a truly great film, one of the year's strongest and bravest. And it's too bad that Paramount Classics is trying to promote it by disguising it as a comedy. This is a deep, dark, black comedy with no laughs, but a lot of bitter irony, and it makes no compromises. The film is violent, sadistic, cruel, and very angry, and that's what it's about. The director is Goran Paskaljevic, who seems almost in despair of his homeland, where civilization is breaking down and barbaric tribalism rules the streets. The movie has been an enormous hit in the former Yugoslavia. It won a top prize at the Venice Film Festival, and it reveals the pain behind the headlines from Kosovo.
The thing that's great about it is it makes absurdism and politics part of the same coin. And this is the crazy cocktail existence that goes on in the Balkans. Within a scene, you just don't know where it's going. Is it going to be brutal, lighthearted, violent, vivid? It goes all over the place.
You know, there does seem to be something going on all through the film, and that is macho violence toward women. It's like these guys are so filled with anger, so filled with hate and with hurt, and so lacking in any way to express themselves that they have to pick on women all the time, women and older people and civilians. And the heroes, the protagonists of each scene, all look kind of the same, middle-aged, big mustaches. They all kind of look like the same type as Milosevic, which I don't think is a coincidence because the director hates Milosevic. And throughout this entire movie, it's like people, like the male violent principle just running wild and taking victims wherever they can be found.
There's nothing like totalitarianism to make great movies.
Certainly true in this case. When we come back, we'll take another look at the movies we reviewed this week and then end with a tribute to Gene Siskel.
When you give a solitaire, you say more. And you say it with more brilliance, more depth, more fire. The Diamond Solitaire. A diamond is forever. De Beers.
Time to get washed. Daddy's almost home. Honey, can you wash your feet? Hey, I hear Daddy.
Hey, guys! Hi.
Hey, honey.
Okay, let's eat.
Hey, where are the fries?
What, no fries? I can't believe Daddy forgot the fries. I'll go get some more. Some.
Hurry back. Fry breath.
Did somebody say McDonald's?
Now let's take another look at the movies we reviewed this week. Two thumbs down on Mickey Blue Eyes, the anemic mob comedy starring Hugh Grant. But we both really liked the coming-of-age story, The Adventures of Sebastian Cole. That one's recommended. We both also had a lot of fun with Albert Brooks' sly and subtle comedy, The Muse, starring Sharon Stone as his very demanding source of inspiration. It opens next week. But two thumbs down on the lame and boring round of teen angst called Teaching Mrs. Tingle. And finally, we both greatly admire the dark, sardonic Cabaret Balkan. So, Cabaret Balkan, The Muse, and then the sleeper is The Adventures of Sebastian Cole, which I hope people look for because it's a real find.
I think it's going to launch a lot of good careers. And Cabaret Balkan also.
I hope so. And thanks a lot, Destin, for being here this week.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, we'll be back next week with a special program on the boom in animation, including a look back at the summer's big animated hits. And remember, you can hear our reviews on the web at Siskel-Ebert.com, Destin and myself. It's part of the Go Network. Now, please stay tuned for a special tribute. For the first half of this season, my friend Gene Siskel was in his usual seat across the aisle. and not a day goes by when I don't miss him. There isn't a lot of real film criticism on TV anymore. It's mostly just celebrity gossip, and Gene stood for the very best critical standards. This program will continue in that tradition. A Beverly Hills company called Beantown Productions has created a video tribute to Gene, and we're going to close this season with that tribute.
And you may not think that I care for you when you know down inside that I really do. And it's me you need to show. How deep is your love? Is your love? How deep is your love? I really mean to love. 'Cause we're living in a world of fools, breaking us down when they all should let us be. We belong to you and me.
Okay, Gene, what do I know for sure about you? Well, you were one of the smartest, funniest, quickest men I've ever known, and one of the best reporters. And I know for sure that seeing a truly great movie made you so happy that you'd tell me a week later your spirits were still high.
When they all should let us be. We belong to
You know, big guy, I love you.